Dean Corll, known as the Candyman, was born in 1939, and he took over his mom's candy business. When he was in the army, she wanted him to take over the business, so he ended up leaving the army to take over the candy shop. David Brooks was a kid, and Dean befriended him. And David, not having the best home life, thought of Dean as a father figure. Well, one day, David walked in on Dean having two boys strapped to what they describe as a torture table. And he was molesting the two boys. Well, he would go on to tell David that he killed the two young boys, and he gave David a car for his silence, and he told him that if he helped him get more young boys, that he would give him money, $200 for every boy he would get. So that's what David did. And David, at first, was Dean's basically only one that was doing this until Wayne come along. Wayne was a teenager, and he had dropped out of school, and he was kind of on a bad path in life, but nothing compared to what would end up happening. So David invites him over to Dean's house, and he was actually going to be the next victim of Dean's. But Dean took a liking to him, probably because Dean realized maybe this boy can also help me. Because when it come to David, David was known as a really shy kid, and a lot of people really didn't take a liking to David as much as they did Wayne. So Wayne starts helping Dean for money. And Wayne was bringing his friends, people that were supposed to be his friends. He was inviting them over to the house, and they would be offered something. Normally it was beer, or just, it was known as the party house. And they would go not thinking nothing of it, because this was the 70s. So they would go, and they would wind up. Dean had this trick with handcuffs, where he would tell the victim to put the handcuffs on, because him and he would normally have Wayne do it, but they could get out because they secretly had the keys. Well, when they would have the victims do it, they were not as lucky, and that's when they would be taken and strapped to the table. The torture would go on for days a lot of the times. He would put light bulbs in their penises until it would explode. He would bite off the penises sometimes. And like I said, this went on for days. And then he would normally bury him in his shed. And Wayne, he even would take part in killing. There was one, and it's really sad. His name was Mark Scott, and he was able to get out of the handcuffs, and he had a knife, and he was going to stab Dean. And Wayne, who he thought was his best friend, grabbed a gun, shooting him. But it didn't kill him, so they strangled him. And still today, they haven't found his body. There were even two young boys that were friends that worked at the candy shop. And they were taken. And the parents looked for their sons. They would go to the police and they would tell them that there was even a rumor going on about Dane, that he was doing this, but the cops just didn't really look into it because they would say, oh, the boys are just runaways. They would say that about all the boys. So the police were not really a big help. And a lot of times, Wayne would get two boys normally to go with. Sometimes it would be one, but I noticed a lot of times in researching it, it was a lot of times normally two they would take, but sometimes they would take one. And sometimes I wonder if the reason Dean didn't like taking two was so that one could watch the other one die. If he didn't like doing that, because he was really big on torture. So Billy was 17 and he told his dad he was going fishing and he was going with his friend. So the dad obviously let him go, not thinking that anything bad was going to happen. And what he didn't know is that he wouldn't see his son alive again. And what's so sad is he had just lost his wife and he also lost his son. And Billy was forced to write a letter to his dad. And he told his dad that he would be gone for a little while. But the last thing he wrote is, I love you, Daddy. So, what brought everything to a head was Wayne took one of his friends with him. His name was Timmy. They also call him Curly. So anytime you hear his name, it's either Timmy or Curly. And as they were going, there was a young girl who she was being abused by her father. So she asked Wayne if she could go with him to get out of the house, and he told her, yeah. Dean was not happy about this. So he waits until they pass out, and he puts handcuffs on him, and he tells Wayne, like, I'm going to kill you. And Wayne tells him, I will help kill him. So Dean lets him go and takes Timmy to where the room is. It's got the torture table, and he tells Wayne to basically take the girl in another room and basically torture her. And the girl asks Wayne, like, is this real? And he goes, yes, it's real. So she asks him, like, what are you going to do about it? That's when he takes a gun and goes in the room. And Dean tells him, you won't shoot me. But he does shoot him a couple of times before he passes away. And then he calls the police. And as he's being arrested, he calls his mom. And there's actually a recording of it where he tells her that he killed Dean. So once he's arrested, he doesn't say anything about David at first. But David comes in the next day and basically confesses everything. But Wayne tells him he had no part in killing. And David says that's not true. So still today, Wayne is in prison. David passed away of COVID. And so we know everything we know because of them. But my thing is, when did Dean actually start killing? How many victims are they really?